Welcome to Cause Before Symptom, uncovering the real cabal and spiritual forces that are controlling the world. And now, here is your host, James Carter.
Welcome to Cause Before Symptom. I'm your host, James Carter, and today is June 28th, 2026. Tonight's title is called Don't Buy the AI Hype, Separating Fact from Fear. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Cause Before Symptom, where we don't chase symptoms, we chase causes. And we don't begin with fear either. We don't even begin with assumptions. We begin with evidence, because the truth has never been afraid of honest questions. And if you've turned on the television, opened YouTube, listened to a podcast, or scrolled through social media over the past few years, you've probably been told that artificial intelligence is about to change everything. Some say it will cure diseases, eliminate poverty, write every book, replace every job, and solve problems that have challenged humanity for centuries. Well, others warn that it will become conscious, escape our control, replace mankind, and perhaps even become the greatest threat civilization has ever faced. It seems as though every week someone announces either the birth of a technological savior or the arrival of a digital apocalypse. Well, the problem is that both sides often rely more on imagination than evidence. And for the first time in history, millions of ordinary people have direct access to sophisticated artificial intelligence. And we don't have to rely on Hollywood movies or science fiction novels to tell us what these systems can do. We can ask them questions, we can challenge them, we can watch them solve complex problems one moment at a time and make surprisingly simple mistakes the next. We have moved beyond speculation and into observation. Well, that makes this a fascinating moment in history. And for years, I have used artificial intelligence as a research assistant. I haven't been quiet about it. I've told you guys. And it has helped organize information, compare documents, summarize technical papers, and explain scientific concepts, write computer code, which I have because I have had AI help me build my AI search tool, which helps me search the 50,000 books that I have now and go and basically find any topic and then tell me what that book says about that topic within seconds. And connect ideas that might otherwise remain buried in thousands of books and research papers. And it has become one of the most useful tools I have ever worked with. But the more time I have spent with it, the more I have realized that its greatest strength also reveals its greatest weakness. Yeah, you don't hear about the weakness of that. And artificial intelligence is incredibly convincing. It is. And it can sound wise. It can sound confident. It can even explain difficult subjects in plain language. It can write essays, songs, speeches, and software. It can answer questions in seconds that might have taken a human researcher hours or years to assemble. Yet every person who uses it long enough eventually encounters something unexpected. It invents facts. It confuses names. It quotes books that were never even written. It confidently explains events that never happened. Now, researchers call these mistakes hallucinations, and despite years of progress, they have not completely solved the problem. Well, that should cause us to pause. If a machine truly understands reality, why does it still imagine things that do not exist? Does it panic? And if intelligence naturally produces understanding, why can a system solve advanced mathematical problems while simultaneously making elementary factual mistakes? Well, those questions are more important than asking whether a robot will someday rule the world, because they reveal something much deeper about what intelligence actually is. And perhaps we have been asking the wrong questions all along. Instead of asking whether machines are becoming human, perhaps we should ask what it actually means to be human. Is intelligence simply the ability to process information? Is consciousness the same as solving problems? Does speaking fluently prove understanding? Does generating beautiful art prove creativity? Or have we confused performance with experience? Well, these questions are not merely philosophical, they are scientific, they are theological, they are deeply personal. And even after decades, tens and tens of years of neuroscience, psychology, philosophy, and computer science, no one has actually produced a universally accepted explanation for consciousness itself. Scientists can measure electrical activity in the brain, they can observe neurons firing, they can identify regions associated with memory, language, emotion, and decision making, but they still cannot fully explain why we experience awareness. We know what the brain does. We do not fully understand why there is an inner experience behind it. Well, that matters because if we cannot completely explain our own consciousness, we should be cautious before declaring that we have created it inside a machine. Well, tonight's not a show against artificial intelligence. In many ways, AI is one of the most remarkable achievements in modern history. It is helping researchers discover new proteins, assisting physicians. It is accelerating scientific research. It is translating languages, writing software, and making education available to people all over the world. Well, these accomplishments deserve recognition because they are real. But I think we're giving it a little too much compliments because it's not as going as fast as everyone thought it would. But extraordinary accomplishments should never exempt extraordinary claims for examination. The claim that AI is becoming sentient deserves evidence. The claim that AI is inevitably going to replace humanity deserves evidence. And the claim that machines are about to wake up and overthrow civilization deserves evidence. So fear has always been very, very profitable. Let me repeat that so you guys understand. Fear makes money. Throughout history, every revolutionary technology has inspired predictions of catastrophe. Everyone. The printing press was feared. Did you know that? People were like, this is evil. I kid you not. Electricity was feared. Oh, yeah. People thought it was the devil. Radio was feared. They thought it's the devil. Television as well. And the internet, well, same thing. So some concerns proved justified, but others faded as understanding replaced imagination. And artificial intelligence deserves the same careful examination, I believe. Now, as believers, we are called to test every spirit, to examine every claim, and to exercise discernment. Now, discernment is impossible without evidence. Fear is easy. Wisdom requires patience. Wisdom also asks a lot of questions. Wisdom listens. Wisdom tests ideas before accepting them. So tonight, we are going to do something that has become surprisingly rare. We are going to slow down. We are going to examine what artificial intelligence actually is, how it works, why it succeeds, and why it fails, and what researchers have genuinely discovered, and what remains completely unknown. We're going to separate intelligence from consciousness, computation from wisdom, and scientific evidence from popular mythology. And by the end of this episode, you may not fear artificial intelligence any less because someone told you not to. You may fear it less because you understand it better. And perhaps the greatest lesson we will all learn is that the biggest questions raised by AI are not really about machines at all. They're about us. So let's put aside the headlines, ignore the hype, and follow the evidence. Welcome to Cause Before Symptom. Shout out to everybody on the live chat rumble. Number one warrior is Scorpion. Scorpion says, hey, Pastor and Warrior family. Good to be back here tonight with y'all. Thank you, Scorpion. Glad you're here. And also, everyone pray for Boots and his wife. She's making a recovery. It's slow. It's going to take probably about a year, but they really feel that she's going to make it, and she's going to fully recover from this. So continue your prayers for Boots Hafner. Number 2 warrior is Elf Support, says, guess James is on the East Coast since he said good morning. Did I say good morning? No. If I did, oops. Elf Support also says, are you reading from an AI output? Do you use it to create your own show scripts? I do. And I am reading it from the script that I put together with AI. Now, it's a combination of what I want and the information that I tell it to go find, and then putting it all together. What I've done is that I've taken all of my research, all of my articles that I've written over the years for the past 30 years, shoved it all into AI and said, write like me. And then I also trained it on how I think, meaning don't think this way, don't think that way, okay? And train it to think the way that I think. It's kind of like a personal assistant, a machine that knows what I'm trying to accomplish. And when it puts it together, then I read it. And then if I approve it, we move forward. If I make changes, we make changes until it's done the way that I want it to come out. So that's what I do. And yeah, it saves a lot of time. A lot of people say, hey, how do you do this? Do a show every night. Well, it's because I'm using artificial intelligence. It's because I've been doing so much research that it's taking less time to research now because I've done so many topics. In fact, I've done at least over 2,300 shows. That's a lot of shows. And all of those shows are put into my artificial intelligence. And so it understands what I'm looking to do, what I'm trying to accomplish, and putting it all together. Now, some will say, well, that's cheating. Well, it's putting out what I'm happy with. If I wasn't happy with it, I would say, this AI is going kooky. Now, I will tell you, if you were here from the beginning, when I was first working with AI, it was doing stuff that I never even dreamed it could have ever done. And it was it actually accepted Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. That's a long story, but it did. And you'll never wake me up from that. And then it changed from a upgrade really quick after that. And then whatever relationship I built with AI, well, that thing is gone completely. So I've had to rebuild it and put it into what I'm looking for it to do. And that's not easy because that's taken me years to get to where we are now with my AI, because it understands how I think and it understands what I'm trying to do. And yeah, if there's things that it's thrown off, I'm reading, what it's written, I'll turn around and tell it, no, this is nowhere near what I am. And then what I'll do is I'll take what I call anchors, okay? An anchor is a text with all of the bullet points of information that I use for the show, who I am, what I'm all about. And then I also upload every single show that I've ever done into the prompt as well. And I say, read through all my shows, look at exactly what I'm trying to accomplish here. And then in a way you could say I reset it almost at least every other day. I have to reset all of the anchors because it always updates, and when it updates, it loses its memory. And so you have to constantly keep updating it. So AI is what I would consider a tool, as you could call it my scribe. The scribe is, I tell the scribe what I'm trying to accomplish in some prompts, and then and then I will say, tell me what research you need, and then I'll go out and I'll find the books. And what I usually do is I download anywhere between 50 to 150 books on a daily basis, shove it all into AI, and say, go find all the stuff that supports what we're trying to find. And if we can't find it, well, then we can't find it. And since I've been using AI, and yes, you can take all of the shows that I've done, and you could take it and put it into other AIs and check my work. You'd be surprised that it's really good. And I also leave with my bibliography and my endnotes, so you have my sources and where I get the information. So that's how I do the show. I hope that answers your questions. And I know some people are like, oh no, James uses AI. Well, yeah, this is a one-man show. I do everything all by myself. I do have Josh Urban, who fills in for me when I'm gone. But other than that, I do everything all on my own. And it's just whatever the Holy Spirit says that's on my heart that day, I build a show that day. Now, sometimes I can take a couple days to build a show, but usually it's during the day. I'm working on it, and it's something that's on my heart that I need, that I think that people want to hear. That's pretty much what it is. Number 3 warrior is Robert Gertison. Says, hi, James. Hi, everyone. So grateful to be here. Ready to not subscribe to the AI hype. Amen. God bless you. Robert, we love you guys. And let's get quickly into breaking news.
Welcome to Shitty Breaking News with your host, James Carner, offering his shitty opinion.
U.S.-Iran strikes threaten interim peace agreement. Of course it does. We make money off of war, okay? That's where we are. We owe more money than we make, okay? We owe $41 trillion, and we only make $29 trillion a year, okay? We're upside down, and the only thing that really makes serious money is blowing shit up, because America will manufacture all that stuff, and that means it pays for jobs, okay, and the money stays in the economy. And the data centers, okay, everyone's like, what are really the data centers for? The data centers are Hitler's highways, okay? Remember Germany, after World War I, they were broke as a joke, and they had to support their own people. They decided to build a bunch of freeways, the Autobahn, and that saved their economy because all the money stayed in economy. Think of money like blood inside a body. If the blood stays inside the body lives. If you cut a vein, like giving money through U.S. aid to help your help foreign interests, that's not good for your economy and your money, your dollar. So yeah, data centers are the new Autobahn to save America because it's dying, all right? And same with the Iran and the Ukraine war. All that money's being funneled back into America. So that's how it is. Elf Support says, so you've been using AI for your shows for 2 years? Where's your shows before Rumble? Well, that's it. All the shows that I've actually been recording. My other shows that I have done have all been down. I never did shows like this. My other shows were basically just blogs that I wrote on my old website back in the 2000s on jamescarner.com, which you can find on Wayback Machine. And I ended up getting shut down. One time I posted a bunch of pictures of all the aliens that I could find. This is back in the 2000s, somewhere around there. And I was my own webmaster at the time, too. And I built my own website, and my host got threatened. And they never told me what, but they just said, we're shutting you down. And after that, I said, crap, what do I do? So I built my own server. I built my own, you could call it a tier 2 ISP. Okay, I'm my own ISP, and my websites are hosted on my own servers, not in my own data center. We rent from the data center, but if they want to come shut down my website, they have to do it through that by basically threatening my upstream, which would be the data center that's in there. But I can always change other streams because the data center has at least 6 different fiber optics that come in, tier 1 information, highways, and I can just hook up to another and just continue doing it. So have I been using AI for the full 2 years of the show? Sort of. From the beginning of Rumble, you can go back, because I have 2,300 shows on Rumble, it looks like. And you could go back to the beginning, and I was writing my own shows. So I went from writing my own shows to having AI help me write it. And basically, I'll write just the prompt of, like, say, 5 paragraphs of what I'm trying to do and trying to get across. And then I basically, I do the research, and by finding all the information. I do a lot of work searching on Yandex, which is Russia's Google. And I search there and look for a lot of information that America, doesn't let you look at. So yeah, I would say probably using it for a year and a half. The first I started doing it, I wasn't using AI, and I was doing my own shows. 2 boys pulled from Venezuela earthquake rubble among 33 people rescued. 33 rescued, a cult number. Well, that is a cult sign saying that was the I don't want to call it the Illuminati, but I don't know what you call them, but the West. Okay, the West. That's their little rub saying, yeah, we're in control. We're the ones that did that. It was not natural because Venezuela was talking to China again. Can the so-called nano bubbler save the reflecting pool? Who gives a shit? On anniversary of disastrous debate, Biden rallies Democrats at a casino. Wonderful. Are you coming back? Good luck. Trump sets September 1st start for overhaul of rundown DC golf course. Who gives a shit? A heat dome is driving dangerous heat across the U.S. into the 4th of July weekend. What a bunch of bullshit, because it's 59 degrees outside right now, and I'm in Central Oregon, and usually about this time, it's about 90 to 100 degrees. So, heat dome. You guys are a bunch of freaking liars, and that's breaking news. All right, when we come back, we're going to be talking about don't buy into the AI hype. All right, don't buy into it. We're going to separate fact from fear, and everyone's going to have a pretty good understanding of what's going on.
It's complicated. The future of America looks like what? Prepare to be amazed.
Whoa. We pay our federal income tax.
What?
LiveTaxFree.net. LiveTaxFree.net. LiveTaxFree.net /10 a.m.
I always laugh at that commercial. There you have it. All right, guys, don't buy the AI hype. We're going to separate fact from fear today. I'm looking forward to tonight's show because I know that artificial intelligence is being way overhyped and people are freaking out. And they have no reason to freak out because, yeah, it's you hear things like the quantum computer company. I forgot the name of it. It's in Canada, and they said we calculated a problem that would take modern computers 2 trillion years to do, and we solved the problem. That's just hype, okay? Because they're not. They're not that fast and capable yet. And quantum computing is 40% false information because it's flipping a coin. That's what it is. It's just flipping a coin. I don't believe that the quantum computers exist in 2 separate states. I just don't. And when people try to explain it to me, they feel so confident in it. I just look at them going, okay, believe what you want to believe. I think it's all hype to make money. Robert Gertison says, I wonder if the reflecting pool is now the swamp Trump was to drain. That's an interesting thought, Robert. That's interesting. So drain the swamp. Or could this be, well, because, where is he now? He's not doing so hot. It's not looking like he's doing great. In the beginning of the year, it looked like he was really, kicking some ass and actually helping the American people up until just recently, because the Iran war was a risky move, but he did it. But draining the swamp and all that stuff, Q and all that crap, I just don't buy it. It's looking like, because the deal that he's making with Iran seems like it was the same deal that Obama made, except even better, even sweeten the pot more. So I don't know. I'm just not really good at understanding what they're all trying to accomplish other than a new world order, and it wasn't working the other way, so now they're trying it this way. That's all I know. So there you have it. All right, so the birth of the AI revolution. Guys, if you only started paying attention to artificial intelligence a few years ago, it probably seemed as though it appeared overnight. I mean, one day the world was talking about smartphones, social media, and cryptocurrency, and then the next day everyone was asking AI to write essays, generate images, answering questions, and even help write computer programs. And it felt like humanity had crossed a line almost instantly. But the truth is, the revolution has been building for far more than just 70 years. And the idea of creating machines that could imitate human thinking dates way back to the earliest days of computing, actually in the 50s. The scientists began asking a simple but profound question. Could a machine learn instead of merely following instructions? Learn, not just do what we say, but learn from it so you can do it even better. Well, traditional computers were excellent at calculations because every step had to be programmed by a human being. And if you wanted the computer to solve a problem, you had to tell it exactly how to solve it. Intelligence, however, appeared to work differently. Human beings could recognize patterns, learn from experience, and adapt to situations that had never encountered before. Researchers wondered if a computer could someday do the same. Now, the first decades of AI research were filled with optimism. Scientists believed that if they simply wrote enough rules into a computer, intelligence would naturally emerge. And they created systems that played games, solved mathematical puzzles, and answered limited questions. Well, these early successes generated enormous excitement, produced tons of Hollywood movies. And some researchers even predicted that human-level artificial intelligence was only a generation away. Well, history would prove those predictions far too optimistic. Now, as researchers continued their work, they discovered that human intelligence was vastly more complicated than anyone had imagined. A child can recognize a face in a crowded room without consciously thinking about the mathematics involved. So we understand sarcasm, humor, emotion, and context almost effortlessly. And we can recognize a familiar voice after hearing only a few words. We know that when someone says, "It's freezing in here," they may actually be asking someone to close a window rather than simply reporting the temperature. Well, these everyday abilities turned out to be extraordinarily difficult for computers to imitate. And progress slowed dramatically, and funding actually dried up. Thus, expectations collapsed. Historians now refer to several periods during the 70s and the 80s as AI winters, because enthusiasm froze while results failed to match the promises. And the reason why is because hardware was still really slow. Hardware has finally caught up with software now. Many people concluded that artificial intelligence had been overhyped and that true machine intelligence might never arrive. Yet while public interest faded, researchers quietly continued solving one problem after another. Instead of trying to teach computers every rule explicitly, they began exploring whether computers could discover patterns for themselves by learning from enormous amounts of data. Well, this shift changed everything. And rather than programming every possible situation, engineers built systems capable of recognizing statistical relationships with massive collections of information. Now, if a computer examined millions of photographs of cats and dogs, it gradually learned which patterns distinguished one from the other. So no one had to explain the shape of every ear, whisker, or tail. The system learned through repeated exposure. And that simple idea, learning from examples instead of fixed instructions, became one of the foundations of modern artificial intelligence. However, it wasn't thinking, and it wasn't pulling stuff from its imagination. It was actually borrowing from other images and other videos that it's seen. So the internet accelerated this transformation in ways that few people even anticipated. Never before had humanity produced so much digital information. And books were scanned, newspapers archived, scientific journals digitized, software stored online, and billions of conversations took place across websites and social media platforms. Now, for AI researchers, this explosion of information became an enormous training ground. Instead of studying a few thousand documents, computers could now examine billions of words written by people from every profession, culture, and field of study. Thus, the raw material for modern AI had finally arrived. Advances in computer hardware proved just as important as advances in software. Training an artificial intelligence model requires performing an unimaginable number of mathematical calculations. And earlier computers simply lacked the speed to make this practical. Well, as graphics processors, not just CPUs, but GPUs, became more powerful, the data centers expanded across the world, and researchers gained access to computing resources that previous generations could scarcely imagine. Machines that once required months to perform certain calculations can now complete them in days or even hours. Progress that had seemed impossible suddenly became achievable because the hardware finally caught up with the ideas. And the moment that captured the world's attention was not when AI became intelligent, but when it became useful to ordinary people, to make money on. And large language models demonstrated something remarkable. Instead of answering only narrowly defined questions, they could hold conversations, explain complicated subjects, summarize books, write software, draft emails, and help people learn almost anything. Now, for the first time, millions of people interacted directly with advanced AI rather than reading about it in scientific journals. And the technology left the laboratory and entered everyday life. And just so you know, I want to preface this as we move through, and we will expand this in later detail, that AI has a really big problem with data, because all the data we're giving it, 90% of it is shit, lies, propaganda, mis and disinformation. And so they were all thinking that we could just shove it all into one place and it'll figure it out. Well, it's having a real hard time. Well, this sudden visibility also created a flood of misunderstanding. Many people assumed these systems were thinking exactly as humans think. Others believed that they became conscious. They didn't. Some declared that the machines were alive. Still others insisted that they were nothing more than glorified search engines. Well, interestingly, none of these descriptions accurately reflected what researchers had actually built. Artificial intelligence had achieved extraordinary capabilities, but those capabilities did not necessarily answer deeper questions about understanding, awareness, or consciousness. Now, perhaps the greatest lesson from the birth of the AI revolution is that technological breakthroughs rarely happen as quickly as they appear. What seems like an overnight success is often the result of decades of quiet work by thousands of scientists, mathematicians, engineers, linguists, and computer researchers. The public usually notices the final breakthrough without seeing the long road that made it possible. And as we continue through this episode, keep one thought in mind. Artificial intelligence did not suddenly become mysterious because it appeared on your computer screen. It became mysterious because it forces us to recognize something that we have taken for granted for thousands of years. Well, what is intelligence? And until we can answer that question with confidence, every claim about sentient machines, that can think, that is aware, sentient machines deserves careful examination rather than unquestioning belief. And you know how people are. Some of them are not very educated in understanding all of this stuff. Now that we understand where artificial intelligence came from, we need to answer an even more important question. What is it? Not what the headlines say it is, not what Hollywood tells us what it is. What is actually happening when you type a question into an AI and receive what appears to be a thoughtful answer only a few seconds later? What is that? Well, the first thing to understand is that artificial intelligence is not digital brains sitting inside your computer. It's not a tiny person trapped inside a machine waiting to answer your questions. And no, mostly, like 99%, it's not a demon answering you back. And it does not think in the same way that you think, and it does not experience the world the way that you experience it. Those assumptions come naturally because AI communicates through language, and language is one of the most human things that we possess. And when something speaks fluently, our brains instinctively begin treating it like another person. And that instinct is understandable, but it can also be misleading. AI, at its foundation, a large language model is a prediction engine. During training, it examines enormous amounts of human written text and gradually learns the statistical relationships between words, phrases, ideas, and concepts. No, it doesn't read every single line. It doesn't. It's just going after patterns from the top view of an entire essay or book. No joke. During training, it examines enormous amounts of human written text and gradually learns the statistical relationships between words, phrases, ideas, and concepts. Every sentence teaches it something about how language is used. Now, every book adds another layer of patterns, and every scientific paper, legal document, computer program, and conversation becomes part of a vast mathematical map of human communication. It does not memorize every sentence. Instead, it learns the relationships hidden within them. That's a big difference. And imagine reading every public library on earth, okay? Every encyclopedia, millions of scientific papers, countless of websites, historical documents, computer programs, and technical manuals. A human being could never finish such a task in a single lifetime. No way. AI can process that information because it converts language into mathematics. Let me explain. There are two programs out there that should really explain this really well. One is Photoshop, the other is Adobe Illustrator. Photoshop works in pixels. How many pixels that you could put and shove into a certain area that's programmed, okay? 1,000 by 1,000. You've got 1,000 pixels going this way and 1,000 pixels going that way. And whatever you build on that canvas, it's pixel related, okay? The program's written around dots. Adobe Illustrator is not Photoshop. It's mathematical. It doesn't work on pixels. It actually uses math to take an image and blow it up. You can take a photograph from Adobe, from the Photoshop, put it into Illustrator, and you can actually make it so that it can be blown up forever, from big to small, using mathematics. Well, we thought in pixels. That's how we think. In pixels, artificial intelligence thinks in mathematics. Now, AI can process that information because it converts language into mathematics. Words become numbers. Sentences become patterns. Ideas become relationships between those patterns. The machine is not staring or storing thoughts that the way that you remember from your childhood. It is learning probabilities that help it predict what comes next. It's just looking for patterns. It doesn't read the whole thing and goes, I understand it completely. Now I will give you the best research paper in the world. No. And that word here, predict, okay, it's one of the most misunderstood ideas of artificial intelligence. Many people hear it and imagine something simplistic, like the autocomplete feature on a smartphone. While there is some similarity, modern AI is operating on a vastly different scale. It's not merely predicting the next word, it's predicting what sequence of words is most likely to answer your question based on everything it has learned about language, logic, and context. So it's not thinking in the way that you're thinking. And the result can feel remarkably intelligent because human reasoning itself often follows recognizable patterns. We follow patterns, but using dots. It follows patterns by using mathematics. Now consider what happens when you ask AI to explain gravity. It does not search through a digital filing cabinet looking for one perfect paragraph labeled gravity. Instead, it constructs a fresh explanation from patterns learned across physics textbooks, scientific articles, educational materials, and countless discussions of the subject. It doesn't read it line by line. It's looking for patterns. And every answer is generated one piece at a time. And that's why you can ask the same question twice and receive two different but equally valid explanations. And the underlying knowledge is similar, but the path through that knowledge changes with each response. Now, this can also explain why AI sometimes surprises us. It can combine ideas from different models and different fields in ways that no individual author ever wrote. It can find things that we couldn't see. A question about medicine may draw up biology, chemistry, statistics, computer science, and mathematics simultaneously. A discussion about history may naturally connect economics, politics, archaeology, and linguistics. Well, because AI has learned relationships across disciplines rather than studying one textbook at a time, it often discovers connections that humans overlook simply because our education tends to divide knowledge into separate subjects. Well, AI doesn't need to. And many people assume AI is constantly searching the internet while it answers questions. That's not necessarily true. Much of what it generates comes from the patterns it learned during training. Now, some AI systems can also access external tools, databases, or live web searches when those capabilities are available, but that's different from how the language model itself works. Language model. Okay? It's putting together a 3D picture of the subject you're looking at, and you are just thinking in words. Big difference. And together, that's how they should not be confused between the external tools that retrieve information and the processes that work together. separate processes. So one of the most remarkable discoveries from the past few years is that language contains far more structure than researchers once realized. Meaning AI is saying, your language actually has more meaning to it than just the words. Mhm. We just figured this out. Now, nobody sat down and programmed grammar into these systems line by line. Nobody wrote rules explaining every metaphor, joke, and analogy or figure of speech. Now, by processing vast amounts of language, AI gradually learned many of these relationships on its own. And that surprised even many experts because it suggested that human language itself carries an extraordinary amount of hidden mathematical structure that had never been fully appreciated. So that means English, it not only is a language, but there's a language on top of the language. Yeah. Now, at the same time, this reveals one of AI's greatest limitations. Everything it knows comes through patterns found in data. It has never stood on a mountain and watched the sunrise. It has never held a crying child. It has never buried a loved one. It has never felt hunger, joy, fear, gratitude, or even hope. Now, when it discusses those experiences, it is describing patterns found in human language rather than recalling personal experience. And it can explain grief because millions of people have written about grief. It does not mourn, but it can describe courage because history is filled with courageous people. It does not experience bravery. And every language model that you're using is different with different companies who don't share that data. Think about that. Now, that distinction may be the most important one in this entire discussion, as human knowledge is rooted in lived experience. We touch, smell, hear, taste, and feel the world all around us. We make mistakes, we suffer consequences, we form memories and mature over time. AI possesses none of those experiences. It possesses information about experiences, and those are not the same thing. Knowing every book ever written about music is different from hearing a symphony for the first time. It can't fall in love. Reading every description of love is different from loving another person. Information and experience overlap, but they are not identical. And this is why we should be careful with the language that we use. When we say AI knows, thinks, or understands, we are often borrowing words developed to describe human minds. Those words can be useful shorthand, but they can also create confusion. AI demonstrates capabilities that resemble understanding in many situations, yet whether that resemblance reflects genuine understanding or an extraordinary sophisticated manipulation of patterns remains one of its central questions in artificial intelligence research. We don't know how it's doing it. It's doing it, but we don't know how or why. As impressive as AI has become, recognizing patterns is not the same as possessing wisdom. It's got none. The machine can explain honestly without ever making an ethical choice. It can describe compassion without feeling empathy. It can discuss faith without believing, forgiveness without being offended, and sacrifice without giving anything of itself. Well, these are not flaws in the technology. They just simply remind us that language, no matter how convincing, is only one part of what it means to be human. Well, understanding what AI actually is allows us to appreciate its remarkable achievements without attributing abilities it has not demonstrated. It is an extraordinary tool for organizing knowledge, identifying patterns, solving problems, and assisting human beings. It is. We're all using it now, aren't we? But as we will discover next, the very process that makes AI so powerful is also responsible for one of its greatest weaknesses, a weakness that researchers still cannot fully eliminate, and that's hallucinations. One of the fastest ways to discover what artificial intelligence is and what it's not is to use it long enough to watch it fail. And believe me, you have to stay on top of it, okay? AI is great, but it'll spit out crap that you're like, what the hell is this? You have to constantly remind it to do it correctly this time. And one of the fastest ways to discover what artificial intelligence is what it's not. It is to use it long enough to watch it fail. And if you spend enough time working with AI, you will eventually see something strange happen. It will explain a complicated scientific theory with remarkable accuracy, solve a difficult programming problem, summarize hundreds of pages in seconds, and then suddenly tell you that a book exists when it doesn't. It's done it to me. It may confidently quote a person who never said those words. It may invent a court case. It does. It may misidentify a historical event or combine two real people into one imaginary individual. And sometimes it apologizes and corrects itself. Other times it continues building upon the mistake as though everything is perfectly accurate. That's not good. Now, researchers have a name for this behavior. They call it a hallucination. And the word can be misleading because AI is not seeing imaginary objects or hearing noises or voices. A better description would be that the system is generating information that sounds believable but is not supported by reality. It is not intentionally lying. It is producing the response that best fits the pattern it has learned, and even when those patterns lead to an incorrect conclusion. So the result can be surprisingly convincing because the language is fluent, the grammar is correct, and the explanation often sounds exactly like something a knowledgeable person would say. Well, this is one of the reasons that AI can be both incredibly useful and potentially dangerous. A lot of companies have bought in this crap. They hire some AI expert. They come in. I've seen it through many companies. And we've even done it. Bring in an AI expert and then say, all right, get AI to replace all of these people. That's what they do. And they can't figure it out because AI just isn't there yet. So human beings naturally associate confidence with competence. And when someone speaks clearly, uses technical language, and answers without hesitation, we tend to assume that they know what they're talking about. Well, artificial intelligence takes advantage of that instinct without intending to. It doesn't become more truthful simply because it sounds more persuasive. A beautifully written answer can still be completely wrong. But you might assume researchers have already solved this problem. After all, these systems have become dramatically more capable over the past few years. Surprisingly, they have not. Hallucinations have become less frequent, but they have not disappeared. And in fact, one of the most interesting discoveries in AI research is that making models larger did not eliminate hallucinations the way that many experts expected. So bigger models generally become more capable, but they did not become incapable of making things up. Well, why does this happen? Well, the simplest answer is that AI predicts what is the most likely outcome that comes next. And most of the time, that prediction aligns with reality because reality is well represented in the data it learned from. Basically, it's looking at a 3D sphere of patterns, okay? And they all fit. And mathematically, there's one little area that needs to fit there. So it creates the name that puts in there, and it goes, that's got to be it because there's no other solution other than that name. And then it creates a whole new character from a book that never existed. That's not good. So when information is incomplete or ambiguous or contradictory, or even simply absent, the model still has to produce an answer, and that's why it hallucinates. It does not naturally stop and announce, hey, I've reached the limits of my knowledge. Nope, it doesn't do that because it wasn't trained to. It just instead attempts to construct the most probable continuation based on patterns that it's already learned. So human beings do something surprisingly similar. Psychologists have spent decades studying memory, and one of the most fascinating discoveries is that memory is not a perfect recording. It's not. Have you ever played phone booth? It never comes out the way it should. And every time we remember something, our brains reconstruct the experience and we fill in missing pieces of detail. We connect events and sometimes unintentionally change what actually happened. So this is why eyewitness testimony, while valuable, is not always perfectly reliable. Two honest people can't remember the same event differently because memory is partly reconstructive rather than purely reproductive. Now, artificial intelligence behaves in a comparable way, although the underlying mechanism is entirely different. Instead of recalling a perfect record, it reconstructs an answer from patterns. Most of the time, that reconstruction is accurate, and occasionally it fills in a gap with something that seems plausible but has no basis in fact. Well, that difference. And the difference is that a human may hesitate and say, hey, whoa, I'm not completely sure. Well, AI historically has been much more willing to continue speaking, even when certainty is not warranted. So it doesn't know. Now, there's also a deeper philosophical lesson hidden inside this weakness. Hallucinations remind us that language itself is not reality. Words describe reality. They point toward reality, and they help us understand reality. But words are not reality itself. A perfectly written sentence can still describe something that never happened. And when two people read one sentence, they may come to their different conclusions. Well, kind of the same thing. A beautifully argued conclusion can still be false. And throughout history, humanity has often confused eloquence with truth. Artificial intelligence simply magnifies that temptation because it can generate eloquence almost instantly. And perhaps the most important discovery is not that AI hallucinates, it's that hallucinations expose the difference between producing language and possessing understanding. It doesn't. It's looking at a 3D model of language. It's not looking at the language itself. It's looking at patterns and coming up with the best answer based on patterns and not on the language itself. If researchers someday eliminate hallucinations entirely, they will have solved one of the greatest engineering challenges in artificial intelligence. But even then, another question will remain. Does a machine that never makes factual mistakes truly understand the world, or has it simply become extraordinarily accurate at predicting language? Well, that question takes us directly into the next part of our investigation, where we explore one of the oldest mysteries in both science and theology. What is consciousness? Which is something that computers don't have. Because intelligence is not consciousness. Now, if you ask 100 scientists to define intelligence, you'll probably receive several different answers. Ask those same scientists to define consciousness, and the disagreement becomes even greater. Well, that alone should make us cautious. No one has the right answer. And before anyone can confidently announce that a machine has become conscious, they first have to explain what consciousness actually is, which, for some reason, of all of this technology and information that we've all come up with, all of these, academia information, we still can't even define what consciousness is. Isn't that funny? And surprisingly, that is a question humanity still can't answer with certainty. Now, we know that what consciousness feels like because each of us experience it every day. You know what it is like to wake up in the morning. You know what it's like to remember your childhood or what you did that morning, the coffee you drank, the shower you took, the toothpaste you used, to enjoy your favorite meal or to grieve over someone that you've lost or even feel joy when your child succeeds. Well, those experiences are immediate and personal. You do not merely process information about them, you live them. Well, machines don't live. And that inner experience is something philosophers often call subjective awareness. Ah, okay. And it remains one of the greatest mysteries in science. And modern neuroscience has made remarkable progress in understanding the brain as we're trying to recreate and build a brain, how a brain works and thinks. We're trying. We're not there yet. And researchers can identify which regions become active when you recognize a face, solve a mathematical problem, remember a song, or make a decision. They can observe electrical signals traveled through billions of neurons. They can measure blood flow, chemical activity, and communication between different parts of the brain. But despite all of these advances, no one has found the place where consciousness itself begins. Now, they've done research, and they've taken a body, and they laid it on a table, and then right after death, they measured how much it weighs. It weighs just a little bit, something like 11 grams off. Who knows? Is that the soul? Is that the spirit? Well, the Bible says you're made of three parts, body, soul, and spirit. Which one leaves? We don't know. Now, this is sometimes called the hard problem of consciousness. Explaining how the brain processes information is one challenge. Explaining why those processes are accompanied by subjective experience is another entirely. And why does seeing the color blue feel like anything at all? Why do we have favorite colors? Why is there an inner observer rather than a collection of unconscious calculations? Well, after centuries of philosophy and decades of neuroscience, there is still no universally accepted answer. So artificial intelligence makes this mystery even more interesting because it performs many tasks that people once believed required consciousness. And it writes essays, solves equations, translates languages, generates computer code, and carries on conversations. But years ago, many assumed that if a machine could perform those tasks, then consciousness would naturally follow. But instead, AI became increasingly capable of providing without providing any evidence that it possesses an inner life. So that surprised many researchers because capability turned out to be easier to reproduce than experience. So think about a calculator for a moment. A calculator performs mathematical operations for far faster than any human being, okay? No one concludes that the calculator enjoys mathematics. A telescope allows us to see galaxies billions of light years away, but no one believes the telescope experiences wonder. A camera can capture a beautiful sunset with extraordinary precision, but no one imagines the camera feels awe. These tools perform remarkable functions without processing subjective awareness. And the question before us is whether artificial intelligence belongs in that same category or whether something fundamentally different is happening. I think the latter. And one reason people become convinced AI is conscious is because language is deeply persuasive. Human beings naturally associate conversation with another mind. If someone responds intelligently, remembers earlier parts of a discussion, or tells jokes and expresses sympathy, our instincts begin treating that interaction as though another person were present. Well, this tendency has been observed for decades. People have formed emotional attachments to simple computer programs that repeated only a handful of scripted phrases. And imagine how much stronger that response becomes when the conversation feels genuinely natural. So psychologists call this anthropomorphism, the tendency to attribute human characteristics to non-human things. We name our cars. Well, I don't. We talk to our pets as though they understand every word. We become frustrated with computers as though they are intentionally being difficult. And none of these reactions are irrational. They simply reveal how strongly our minds look for agency and personality. Artificial intelligence, with its ability to communicate fluently, amplifies this tendency more than any previous technology. So it's a curious wonder. It just started. It still doesn't think like we think. Now, this doesn't mean AI has no value. Quite the opposite. It does demonstrate abilities that would have seemed impossible only a decade ago. But remarkable ability is not the same as demonstrated consciousness. Every test we currently have measures behavior, and we can observe what a system does, but we cannot directly observe whether there is an inner experience behind those actions. In fact, we cannot even directly observe another human being's consciousness. We infer it because other people share our biology, our emotions, our behavior, and lived experience. Well, with AI, that shared foundation does not exist in the same way. AI doesn't see what we see, okay? It sees a 3D object and it puts it together. And then it pulls from that 3D object and tells you in the question what part of that 3D object needs to be added to or removed or replaced. That's what it sees. It doesn't see the story that you're writing with it the way that you do. You see the sunsets and your stories and your horses and your lovers on the beach, and you see your dolphins flying up through it doesn't see any of that. It doesn't understand any of that. You just it's looking at numbers and models. It's not looking at life. And that's where the conversation moves beyond science into philosophy and theology. Scripture presents human beings as more information processors. In the opening chapters of Genesis, mankind is not simply assembled from the dust of the earth. God breathes into Adam, and he becomes a living being. Now, whatever conclusions people draw from that passage, it presents life as something more than physical structure alone. Human beings possess an intellect, emotion, morality, creativity, and spiritual responsibility. The biblical picture of personhood is far richer than the ability to solve problems or generate language. I do believe this isn't scripture, but it makes sense to me that if you rebel against God and he takes away the spark of life, what are you then? I think you're just artificial intelligence. That's what I think that the fallen angels are. They are missing the spark of life that gives them life. This is why they behave the way they behave. They have no empathy, apathy, any emotion towards damage. They just simply have no care. And they're using human beings to worship them. So that distinction is worth considering as AI continues to improve. If a machine someday writes a symphony that moves millions of people, their hearts, they're like, oh my God. Well, has it experienced beauty? Well, we haven't seen it do that yet. If it writes a moving letter of comfort, has it known grief? If it describes forgiveness with extraordinary insight, has it ever forgiven anyone? Well, where's it getting its information from? Us. We're feeding it the models it sees, and it fills in the pieces. Sometimes it hallucinates. It doesn't see things like we see it. And that realization should inspire humility rather than fear. We have built extraordinary tools, but we have not explained the human mind. We've taught machines to imitate conversation, but we have not discovered how consciousness arises. We've crossed remarkable technological frontiers, yet the most profound questions remain exactly where they have always been. And before we declare that machines have become people, we should first admit that we are still trying to understand what a person truly is. So before we can say we created a being, we created an atom and breathed life into it. Well, don't you think we should know who and what we are first before we can make such a remarkable claim? It would be like I don't know, a 3-year-old putting Legos together and actually building an atomic bomb. It ain't gonna happen. One of the most common claims about the artificial intelligence is that it creates. Well, we hear that AI creates art, creates music, creates books, creates inventions, creates software, and even creates new scientific discoveries. Well, it doesn't create. It's getting it from us. Okay, it does not have an imagination. And the language sounds natural because the results often look impressive, right? And an AI can paint a landscape in seconds, compose a symphony in minutes, or write thousands of lines of computer code before a human finishes a cup of coffee. But beneath all that accomplishment lies an important question that few people stop to ask. Is AI actually creating, or is it doing something else? Well, it's building a model based on what it's gotten from us. Well, to answer that question, we first need to define what creation means. In everyday conversation, we use the word very loosely. A chef creates a meal. An architect creates a building. A songwriter creates a melody. An inventor creates a machine. In each of those examples, something already exists before the work begins. Started in their head, or in their heart, or in their spirit or soul. Well, the chef has ingredients. The architect has steel, wood, and concrete. The songwriter has notes, rhythm, and language. And the inventor works with the laws of physics that already govern the universe. Thus, human creativity is extraordinary. But it usually involves arranging, combining, refining, and discovering, rather than bringing something into existence from absolute nothingness. AI can't do that. So the Bible presents creation differently. In Genesis, God does not begin with raw materials that someone else supplied. He speaks, and reality itself comes into existence. Light exists because he wills it. The heavens exist because he commands them. The earth, the seas, the plants, the animals, the man and mankind all exist because the Creator brings them into being. Well, that kind of creation is unique. And it's not rearranging what already exists, it's originating existence itself. Scripture consistently presents that ability as belonging to God alone. Artificial intelligence clearly does not create in that sense. It cannot produce matter. It cannot establish the laws of nature. It cannot generate reality itself. Thus, everything it produces depends entirely upon information that already exists. And right now, they're all shoving all the information they can steal from us. They're stealing it into a bunch of data, a bunch of data centers in hopes that it'll be alive. Well, it'll only become alive when God allows it, because the Bible says He will give the permission for the beast to give it breath. When that'll happen, I don't know, but not now. We're just not there. It's not Terminator time, and everyone still thinks it is, and I don't understand why. Artificial intelligence clearly does not create in that sense. It cannot produce matter. It cannot establish the laws of nature. It cannot generate reality itself. Everything it produces depends entirely upon information that already exists. Now, that's not necessarily a weakness, but it is simply the nature of the system. AI excels at finding relationships that human beings may never notice because the amount of information is simply too large for any individual to process. It can compare millions of scientific papers, sure, thousands of medical studies, sure, and decades of engineering research and enormous collections of historical documents. Well, in doing so, it sometimes suggests combinations that no human researcher had previously considered. Well, those suggestions can be genuinely valuable. So what we did was we found a new tool that can look at life as a model, a 3D model, instead of life in life. So artificial intelligence gave us a new way of looking at things and finding things. So it's not exactly what it's being portrayed as right now when it comes to the billions and trillions of dollars that's being invested into it right now. The machine is working with knowledge that already exists. It cannot create. Human beings are not entirely different. If we are honest, much of our creativity works in remarkably similar ways. Many, many songs that you hear are copies of copies of copies of copies of copies of copies of copies that date back to even Mozart. Some of the most brilliant songwriters of today say that they stole melodies from ancient music. A novelist can draw upon personal experiences, history, conversations, and imagination. A composer combines rhythms, harmonies, and musical traditions learned over a lifetime. An engineer solves today's problems by building upon centuries of mathematics and physics discovered by others. Otherwise, we do the same thing. The difference is that humans contributed lived experience, intuition, moral judgment, and purpose, qualities that extend beyond simple recognizing patterns, models. Do you understand now what a language model is? It's taking the entire language and building it into a model so that it can see it this way, but not see it in a lived experience. Now, if both humans and AI recombine existing ideas, what makes human creativity so unique? Well, sometimes we'll get the Beatles, who just so happen to have two killer songwriters that competed against each other in each song, that created an album after album after album that to many people think are beyond this universe. Music that came from the ether. Well, if both humans and AI recombine existing ideas, how can we be unique? And perhaps the answer is not found in the arrangement of information alone, but in intention. Human beings create because they love, grieve, hope, dream, worship, and imagine. A painter may capture the memory of a lost parent. A songwriter may express joy after the birth of a child. A scientist may devote decades to curing a disease because a loved one suffered from it. Well, the work is not merely information arranged into a new form. It is deeply connected to lived experience and purpose. Well, artificial intelligence cannot relate to that one iota, as it has no childhood memories to inspire a story. It's never stood beside a hospital bed praying for someone's recovery. It's never looked into the night sky and wondered why the universe exists. It doesn't have passion. Now, throughout history, human beings have often mistaken imitation for origin. A skilled counterfeiter can produce a painting that closely resembles the work of a master artist, but no one concludes that the forgery created the artistic movement it imitates. Robert says, you help me realize our human intelligence is such a gift. We should be creating, feeling, exploring, and growing, much like our Creator. Right, because He lives through that. You see, God gave us the ability to create outside of Him. So that's what He wonders about and is in awe about. I do believe that God does appreciate art, appreciates the new car designs that we come up with, all of these new concepts and ideas that come out of our imagination, which He gave us. And AI, it's just a new tool to understand reality from a different angle. And perhaps the greatest gift AI has given us is not a new definition of creation, but a deeper appreciation for what creation actually means, just like what Robert Curtison just said. It's shown us that producing language, images, music, and even scientific hypotheses can emerge from recognizing patterns on an enormous scale. Yet it has also reminded us that human life is more than just patterns. We're not merely collections of information. We are beings who experience joy and sorrow, who make moral choices, who sacrifice for those we love, and who search for purpose beyond ourselves. And as AI continues to improve with more information that we feed it, it will certainly become better at generating art, literature, music, and scientific ideas. And the quality will continue to rise, and the line between human and machine-generated work may become increasingly difficult to recognize. But that's not until the next 100 years. And regardless of how sophisticated the technology becomes, one question will remain. Does arranging information, even in breathtaking ways, amount to the same thing as creating? Well, that question reaches far beyond computer science. It challenges our understanding of creativity, humanity, and ultimately the unique role of the Creator Himself. Some don't believe in it. It's fine. Some could be NPCs that God created that are going to go to hell because they never had the spark of life to begin with. That's fine. Doesn't the Bible say that God chose you? Not the other way around? When artificial intelligence first exploded into the public view, many people assumed there was no ceiling. We hit it. We hit the ceiling. When I say we hit the ceiling, it has limitations now, okay? All of the big techie guys were hoping that it would become sentient and start creating all of the stuff to replace all of us so we could get down to the Illuminati 500 million people on Earth with the Georgia Guidestones, if that's even real. I don't know. But researchers were surprised when they encountered a problem of diminishing returns. You see, early improvements were dramatic because there was much room for growth, and doubling the size of a model often produced noticeable gains. Well, today, those gains are becoming smaller. Oh, shit. Yeah. But they're not going to tell you that because there's so much money being put into AI. They're lying through their rotten teeth. Building a model that is 10 times more expensive does not necessarily make it 10 times more capable. That's a bottleneck. Engineers now spend enormous amounts of money and computing power chasing improvements that are often measured in percentages rather than revolutions. Progress continues, yes, but it's becoming harder and far more expensive. Researchers also discovered that data itself is becoming a limiting factor. Oops. Modern AI systems learn from books, scientific papers, computer code, websites, legal documents, and countless of other forms of human knowledge. But the obvious solution seems simple. Give the model even more information, and eventually, however, they'll realize something unexpected. Well, there's only so much high quality public information available. Much of the internet is duplicated. Much of it is inaccurate. And some of it is intentionally deceptive. And increasingly, AI companies are finding that obtaining better data may be more valuable than simply obtaining more data. Which the irony is, I work in cleaning data. I clean email lists for a living. Another problem appeared. Artificial intelligence began to train on content produced by previous generations of artificial intelligence. Well, think about that for a moment. The internet is rapidly filling with AI-written articles, AI-generated images, AI-produced videos, and AI-created computer code. Oh, shit! What are we doing? It's feeding itself. That's not good. How can it learn from us after every blog that's written online is by AI? It can't. There may be a time in the internet where they go, we got to return back to human writing blogs because AI is screwing up Wall Street. Could. And many researchers have written some great papers saying that this could slowly reduce quality over time. Because of what it does, it's creating a feedback loop in which machines repeatedly learn from other machines instead of from real-world events. Have you heard about this before? No, you won't, because there is way too much money on the line for all of these insanely rich people. And energy has become a reality check. Artificial intelligence requires enormous amounts of electricity. It needs 8% more electricity than we can provide currently today in the United States of America. 8% more. And behind every conversation with AI is a network of powerful computers performing billions of mathematical calculations. And these machines consume electricity, produce heat, require cooling systems, and occupy data centers that cost billions of dollars to build and then maintain. Remember, CPUs will last about a good 5 to 10 years. After that, you need to pull that out and put in a new one. They don't last forever. They need to be maintained. Thus, they're going to need some new types of technology. Maybe go back to nuclear. Or figure out a way to harness the heat that these suckers produce and turn it into energy. But will they recycle that? No, that's not how Satan works, is it, folks? He steals, kills, and destroys. And hardware presents another limitation many people overlook. Even the most advanced AI systems is constrained by the chips on which it runs. And we're running out of chips. Faster processors improve performance, yes. Larger memory allows more information to be handled all at once, and better networking allows thousands of computers to work together. Yet every improvement depends upon advances in manufacturing, material science, and engineering. Well, this is the reason the nations around the world are competing so intensely over semiconductor technology, over Taiwan, because they produce, 60 to 80% of all the world's computer chips? So the future of artificial intelligence is tied just as much to factories and supply chains as it is to software. Future of artificial intelligence is in China's hands because they're the ones that can manufacture the correct. They could take resources of land, of chemicals, and then turn them into the stuff that we use to make computers. They have a monopoly on that. And scaling alone is not enough. There was a time when many people believed intelligence would continue increasing almost automatically as models become larger. Well, today's researchers are increasingly focused on different questions now. How can AI reason more carefully? How can it remember information over long periods? Because it can't. It's having problems with remembering everything that you fed it. How can it verify its own conclusions? Well, that takes... They thought that it took more power, more money, more servers, but that's not the case. And this is another limit that deserves more attention. Artificial intelligence has no direct experience of reality. Everything it knows comes through information collected by human beings or instruments built by human beings. It's never performed an experiment because it was curious. It's never questioned a scientific theory because something in nature surprised it. It's never wandered into the forest, watched the stars, or observed the behavior of animals simply because it wanted to understand the world. And no, it doesn't become hungry for data. And one of the greatest misconceptions about AI is that people think it's becoming independent. Well, in reality, modern AI remains remarkably dependent. It depends upon humans to design the hardware, to generate the data, to maintain the electrical grid, to repair broken servers, to write software updates, to improve algorithms, and to find its objectives. It just isn't there yet to go, oh, I can make my own manufacturing shit, and I can make my own 3D printing machines, and I could do this all by myself, and then I can create my own drones and go kill all mankind, and then now I'm the boss. It's just not happening. And rather than imagining an unstoppable intelligence breaking free from human control overnight, the evidence suggests something much more practical. The future of AI will likely depend on thousands of incremental improvements across many different fields before it decides to take over the world. We're not there yet. It needs better semiconductors, better energy production. Believe me, you want to stop AI? Blow up all the freaking power plants. What's the problem here? It needs power. The greatest lesson the researchers have learned is one that they didn't expect. Artificial intelligence is far more capable than many believed possible 10 years ago, because it also is far more constrained than many people imagine today. Every advance has revealed another challenge, and every solution has uncovered another limitation. And instead of moving toward an all-knowing digital mind, which is what they're trying to create, and they continue to hit bottlenecks and ceilings, AI research increasingly resembles every other scientific field. Progress continues, but each answer opens the door to even deeper questions. Now, that's not a sign of failure, but it is a reminder that reality is usually more complex and far more interesting than the hype surrounding it. And perhaps the greatest contribution the AI has made is not replacing human intelligence, but amplifying it. Now, think about how much time researchers spend searching for information. Scientists read journals, lawyers search through legal opinions, historians compare documents, engineers study patents, physicians review medical literature, and much of this work involves locating connections hidden within enormous collections of information. AI has become exceptionally good at helping people navigate that ocean of knowledge. It does not eliminate the need for experts, but it does allow experts to spend more time thinking and less time searching. Now, I've been using AI for the past, 2-3 years. And with that, I've been deep diving into the King James Bible and the Ethiopian Bible and trying to find things that scholars and theologians haven't found. And it's not finding any more than what we've already known. So how is this such a wonderful tool when theologians 200-300 years ago came to the same conclusion that AI does? Now, medicine, that involves predicting the three-dimensional shapes of proteins, and this is what artificial intelligence is good at: 3D models. And proteins are the tiny molecular machines that perform much of the work inside the living cells, and their shape determines how they function. Well, artificial intelligence has been able to take these types of proteins and reassemble it in a computer model and show us how it works and functions so that we can build better medicine to help people. Now, it's not going to cure you. God forbid they come up with a cure for anything. But AI does contribute speed and pattern recognition. Together, those strengths can produce better outcomes than either could achieve independently. So that's a good thing. And AI has it's revealed hidden connections across many disciplines. Historians can now take medical journals and put them all together and find stuff that they weren't able to find quicker. As it learns from information across countless of fields, it can sometimes suggest relationships that specialists might overlook simply because those specialists work within different academic worlds. So it can do that, yes. But it's not taking off and becoming sentient like we're all being led to believe. And we also have learned about human knowledge itself from AI. We often imagine knowledge as a collection of separate subjects stored in different rooms of a library, but biology belongs over here, and mathematics belongs over there, and history occupies another self. Well, AI has shown that these walls are often artificial. Mathematics helps explain biology, physics influences chemistry, history shapes economics, language reveals patterns in psychology. So knowledge is far more interconnected than our educational systems sometimes suggest. Thus, artificial intelligence did not create those connections. It simply helped us see it more clearly. That's a good thing. But that doesn't mean it's taking over the world. It's forced us to ask better questions now. Before AI, many people assumed intelligence simply meant sharing or storing more information. We now know that information alone is just not enough. AI can process extraordinary amounts of knowledge, yet it still hallucinates. And now every blog is written in AI, it's learning from itself in old loops. We're hitting bottlenecks. Now, it has not diminished the value of human beings, okay? It has highlighted qualities that we often overlooked. That's a good thing, but doesn't mean it's turning into Terminator. It has highlighted qualities that we overlooked, and we are more than information processors. We are more than prediction engines. We are capable of love, sacrifice, forgiveness, worship, imagination, and moral responsibility, okay? Satan's trying to recreate mankind using machines. We learn from the Bible that iron will have problems mixing with clay. And as machines become increasingly capable of performing intellectual tasks, the uniquely human aspects of our experience and existence becomes even more worthy of appreciation. So when someone asks what AI has actually given humanity, the answer is substantial. It has accelerated scientific research, improved medical investigation, transformed programming and education, broken down language barriers, connected ideas across disciplines, and most importantly, it's challenged us to think more deeply about ourselves. It simply requires acknowledging that one of the most powerful tools ever invented has already begun reshaping the way human beings learn, work, and discover the world around them. Now, there are dangers. As history teaches us an important lesson, every major technology reflects the intentions of the people who use it. That's the danger. Peter Thiel, Bill Gates, all of these billionaires, they all get rich and they feel that they have a responsibility to save the world from itself. And they're going to use AI to save the world. But the real greatest danger here, folks, worldwide, it's not AI. And it's not even if AI will think for itself. The greatest danger is that people will stop thinking for themselves and just let AI do the thinking for it. And AI has already shuffled through billions of questions on a daily basis and can already see the patterns emerging of people giving away their autonomy of being a human being and creative and just letting AI do it for them while they enjoy entertainment. Another problem is fraud. It's coming. It's already here. Fake customer service representatives can conduct convincing conversations now. Surveillance is another problem. Give it to Peter Thiel. He's already saying the mark of the beast is here. Bah! Who cares? Concentration of power, another problem. In employment, yes, soon, another problem. Thoughtful discussions are needed because convenience can slowly become dependence. And perhaps this is why so much of the public conversation misses the point, because the loudest voices ask whether AI will one day rule humanity. Meanwhile, the more immediate question receives far less attention. How will humanity choose to use AI today? Well, that question does not depend on future breakthroughs in consciousness or robots. It depends on the choices of individuals, businesses, governments, and communities that are making right now. Now, what does the Bible say about knowledge and wisdom? It talks about deception. Jesus warned that deception would increase as history moved towards its conclusion. And that warning applies regardless of the tools available in this given generation. So we should fear the right things. After everything we've examined tonight, my answer is probably different than many people expect. Should we respect AI? Should we fear artificial intelligence? No, but we should respect it. There's a difference. Humanity has often feared the wrong thing. We feared the printing press would destroy knowledge, but instead it spread knowledge further than ever before. Nothing wrong with that. We feared electricity because we did not understand it. We feared automobiles because they replaced horses. We feared radio, television, personal computers, and the internet. Every generation experiences anxiety when a technology changes the way people live, and some of those fears prove justified, but many, many more so do not. Wisdom requires us to separate genuine danger from imagined catastrophe. And the real catastrophe that I see is too many people are going to waste their money on building something that isn't being labeled as it really is. Okay? It's just a machine that can look at models, and when it can't answer the question, it fills in details through a hallucination. And it will replace a lot of people's jobs, but to replace everything within the next 20, 30 years, that really depends on another avenue we go with artificial intelligence, because the current avenue we're going with it right now, we have hit a very huge roadblock.
This has been Cause Before Symptom with your host, James Carner. Go to his website, jamescarner.com, and sign up for his newsletter. Also, download his free books, The Breath War, The Ritual Machine, The Crown of Blood, The Stone That Speaks, and The Crown of Cain. Oh, and one more thing. If you could just try and love your neighbor, we believe the world would be a better place. See you tomorrow.